Testing. Good evening. It's Monday, April 27th. We're going to call the meeting to order at 5:31 p.m. and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll start introductions with Councilor Harriman.
Scott Harriman, City Council Representative to the School Committee.
Donna Gallant, Ward 7.
Linnea Hawkins, Ward 5.
Julia Harper, Ward 4.
Elizabeth Eames, Ward 3.
Janet Bowden, Ward 2.
Luke Jensen at large.
Phoenix McLaughlin, Ward 1.
Jake Langley, Superintendent.
Karen Paquette, Assistant Superintendent.
And Member Hurd is unable to join this evening. So that brings us to agenda item number 3, which is the consent agenda, the transactions, minutes, personnel, and 2 policies. Are there any items that members would like to see set aside? Okay, seeing none, the consent agenda is adopted. That brings us to public input. So members of the public may address the school committee for up to 3 minutes on non-agenda items now and on agenda items later. Speakers must adhere to our public comment policy, BEDH, which is available in the back of the room or on the LPS website. These meetings exist to conduct school committee business. The purpose of public comment is to share thoughts on school and educational matters. Committee members and school staff will not reply during this time. Comments must be directed to the chair and be civil. By law, comments may not pertain to specific staff or students. Comments about individuals must be directed privately to the appropriate LPS staff, and student privacy must be maintained. The public comment period is 30 minutes unless extended due to unusual circumstances. Priority goes to Lewiston residents and parents, students, or employees of LPS. Before starting, please state your name, town or city of residence, and affiliation to LPS. Is there anyone who would like to give public comment on any non-agenda items this evening? Okay, seeing none, I really should ask that before I read the blurb, but seeing none for now, I will move on to agenda item number 5, which is to receive and potentially vote on the field trip request to attend the Skills USA National Conference in Atlanta, Georgia.
Good evening. I'm Rob Callahan. I'm the director of the Lewiston Regional Technical Center, and I'm thrilled to be here with you this evening to ask for your permission to allow our students to compete in the Skills USA National Leadership Conference this year in Atlanta, Georgia. It's been a strange year. I think we talked a little bit prior to the state competition regarding the conflict that Skills has with the World Cup, which is happening among other places in Atlanta. So our dates were moved and all that sort of thing. But we are committed to this leadership opportunity for our students. I have 2 faculty members that I'm going to turn it over to a second that I want to just praise because a number of centers and regions around the state decided that they would not send students. It was just too much of an ask at the very end of the school year to make this happen for students. But we are so committed to making sure that our students have the opportunity to compete in a national way, that they've rearranged schedules. The 2 of them that you will meet this evening are even driving equipment down in a van to Atlanta. So the level of dedication is incredible. And again, this has been an ongoing thing through the course of the year. We start by asking every student at the Tech Center to take a moderate risk and compete in at least one competition locally. And we move from there to the state competitions. And then from there, the folks that are receiving invitations, 2 of which you'll meet tonight, are going to be invited to compete against the very best in the United States. And we're very proud of them, and I know they'll represent us well. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce my 2 good colleagues, our Skills USA chapter advisors, Paul Kennedy and Jess Doom.
He's making me do the talking.
All right, so I'm Jess Dew and I teach multimedia and I'm also a skills advisor with Mr. Kennedy.
I'm Paul Kennedy and I'm a plumbing instructor.
And we have a third advisor, Jason Merritt, who is a carpentry teacher who helps with this throughout the year too. So we just have this quick slide for you showing the numbers that we had 96 of our students move up to the state competitions this year, which was absolutely amazing. They represented us really, really well. They brought home the 12 gold medals, the 19 silver, and the 15 bronze medals. So I was really proud of them and how they overcome some of the hurdles. There was a lot of scheduling issues. We're in 4 different locations up there. So it was really nice to see how much they overcame up there. And then we have 9 that are moving on to the national conference. So that's pretty impressive for us. We have crime scene investigation, which you're going to meet a student from that. And then we have customer service, baking and pastry arts, video production, and EMT. So our EMT team will be going back to try to get another national medal on behalf of LRTC, which is really cool. So you can see you each have a cost breakdown on this for student-wise. Can you go to the next slide? This here, I just put the QR code in case anybody of you needed to see it up close on a phone. But if you can click the link in the bottom, Jake, it'll take you to the site that I've created for our students. So at any point, if you guys want to go and see what's going on, this is where I'll be putting all of our updates. So it's scrolling down as the updates come in, they'll be right at the top there. And going down a little bit further, it gives our scheduling, what they'll be going through there. That's a click link. It's pretty much full every day of back-to-back things all week long that we'll be taking them on. And even further down, it gives all the links to like the cost breakdowns that the parents will have to see for our fundraising. And then the places that we'll be staying and taking them, even eateries are on there and everything. So if you ever feel like digging in, see what these kids are going to be doing, we put that information out there for you. And then at the top, if you could click on fundraising. So the fundraising page is kind of what I screenshot and printed you guys. And this is the stuff that we'll be doing throughout the year. Some of these are specific for the national conference. This first one, the kids are going to be looking for they're aiming for $1,000 in sponsorships to get from family, friends, businesses, anybody who would like to sponsor them and help them along so that they have some skin in the game for this, because it is an expensive trip and we want them to really feel that, you need to work towards stuff. They do it with all their technical skills and we want them to help with this part also. So these sheets you may see coming around, but those are the sheets that the students have and they'll be using for their sponsorships. Okay, you can go down to the next one. Another thing that we're doing is Mr. Kennedy's son, some of you saw the rings, he has got us 4 tickets for the Boston Red Sox game that we'll be sending out a raffle of that starting at the end of this week. Those tickets are being printed now. And then we are doing a lobster roll pop-up for the first time this year. We're doing it the Friday before we leave for the summer, so it's kind of a kickoff for summer. Again, Mr. Kennedy has solidified those lobsters for us, so we can do that as a fundraiser. And we have our cruise-in, which is, I don't know who might have come last year, but it was a pretty awesome time out front here. We line the cars. We invite all old type of cars, anything that come in. And they pay a small fee, but they get in for like raffles and stuff. And we have a DJ there. It's a really fun time. We have Touch a Truck for the kids. And we bring in a lot of money towards that's used to help take up some of those costs for this national conference. And then at the bottom, we also do a bottle drive throughout the year, every other week, where Mr. Kennedy and I are taking them over to Ruper's, tagging them to put them onto our account. So we'll have, how much did you think?
$1,000.
About $1,000 by
when we
then.
leave.
Yeah. So I just wanted you guys to see that we are trying to do our part on fundraising and helping the kids kind of go through it before the kids are there and on. So with that all being done, I'd like to introduce a couple of our kids, if you don't mind. So the first one, Jaden, you want to go first? This is Jaden. She's part of the crime scene investigation team.
As she said, my name is Jaden Gustafson. My competition is crime scene investigation, and I'll give you a brief rundown of what we do for crime scene investigation. So For our competition, we have an allotted time we are given in a crime scene. We take our measurements of the room and evidence. We collect said evidence. And after that, we're giving information about what is suspected to be inside of that competition or the scene. After our time stops, we use the data that we collected from the crime scene and the additional information we were given from the start to create our police report, evidence list, and draw out the crime scene to match it with our measurements taken. This is also under a strict time limit of 45 minutes. From everything we gathered, we must then come to a conclusion about what we think actually occurred at the scene. This is the competition that judges our teamwork, since it is a team of 3. It's me, my teammates Tiana Hafner, and Jasmine Mills. However, after we do our teamwork competition, we have our individual skills to demonstrate. In this portion of the competition, each team member has one special skill to demonstrate independently. These skills can be fingerprinting, photography, DNA analysis, etc. In both of these competitions, we are demonstrating our critical thinking abilities, powers, and observation, and how well we work together as a team, and to give an answer of what really happened in that crime scene. Being a part of the Skills USA journey has been an absolute delight. I don't think I would have ever expected to be a part of it if I didn't take that moderate risk, as we all say in LRTC. And this is a really big step in my own journey, since I've never been out of state besides New Hampshire. This opportunity is giving me and the other state champions the chance to gain new experiences outside of Maine, demonstrate our skills in the craft we spend hours perfecting, and the chance to create memories that will benefit our future, because I believe some of us will be using these skills that we learn in LRTC in our future careers. For me specifically, Skills USA Maine is what gave me the opportunity to not only demonstrate my skill in criminal justice, but also show the state one of my other passions, which would be singing. Skills USA Maine has given me the opportunity to, or has given me the opportunity to sing the national anthem at our state competition. That is the biggest step I've ever taken in a lot of the things that I've done. That was the biggest audience I've ever had. 2,000 people watching the national anthem, all by myself without any instrumentals or starting note. I don't know. That's a really difficult thing to do. By giving your support to us, it would be amazing. This opportunity is probably the biggest thing or biggest thank you I could ever ask for from anybody. So thank you.
Thank you so much for speaking with us. Thank you.
She did an amazing job singing. The second student I would like to introduce you to is Cooper Bullier. He's a team, one half of the team that he's on.
Hello, everybody. My name is Cooper Bullier. I'm a senior at Lewiston High School, and I'm also a part of the multimedia program at LRTC. Before I start, I want to try to keep it brief, but I would like to say a very big thank you to Ms. Dewan and Mr. Kennedy. As a multimedia student, I am with her as much as I can be. So that means I get to see the behind the scenes of all of this, and I get to hear her talk to Mr. Kennedy, talk to Mr. Callahan about all the logistics and all the stuff that nobody should have to deal with, but they get the privilege to, and give all the students the opportunities that we get, because like they had said, not everybody in the state gets to do stuff like this. So thank you. With that being said, I the way I see this experience is two halves, is an educational experience and a personal experience. From an educational standpoint, I see this as getting to work on my craft for months. I've been in this program my senior year and as well as my junior year. So I've had 2 years to kind of really learn this kind of industry, the whole multimedia industry. We do so much in our class. But I just think I was with the state conference last year and I got to go again this year. And me and my partner Reese, we took part in the video production, which is very involved. And I kind of like to joke about it a little bit, but we get free reign basically. When we were up in Bangor for our state conference, we got one sheet of paper that gave us instructions, guidelines, and that's about it. We had to plan everything out. We had to do everything ourselves. We had to make sure everything was tidy, set up, and turn everything in. Nobody was there to hold our hand, which was a little scary, but we pushed through it, and I'm very proud because we did end up winning gold. So, just yeah, being able to demonstrate my experiences in my craft to a larger scale audience because this is a national conference. There will be a lot of people there, much more than Bangor. So I'm going to be a little iffy about that, but I'll push through it. And on the personal side, I am a three-sport athlete. I play soccer in the fall and I run track in the winter and the spring, which means I don't get to go on super big vacations. I don't get to go on trips as much as I'd like to because I'm a senior in high school. I need a break sometimes. So getting this opportunity to go to Atlanta, not just for schooling and for education, but also just learning, connecting with students from all over the country and job, there's like a big job demo that they have and networking opportunities and just getting out of New England, getting somewhere out of the country. I've been on a few vacations outside, but I never really get to travel. So even if it wasn't skills and it was just going to the aquarium or going to the giant Lego store that I've been itching to go to, it's just very, very important to me. And I feel like I can say this, I can say that to everybody. It's just a very unique and important experience, I think, and it's a real opportunity to get to have. So, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank
speaking
you.
to us.
Good.
Does anybody have any questions for us?
Any questions for the presenters? Member Harper?
Thank you so much to our amazing staff and our amazing students for speaking to us about this. It sounds like an incredible opportunity. I just wanted to clarify. So yeah, obviously looks like an expensive trip.
Yes.
Also looks like you're doing a ton of fundraising, a bunch of creative fundraising, which I also want to commend you on. So I just wanted to just ask about that piece of it. So are you expecting that you, with all the fundraising, that you'll cover the cost of it?
Yes, we believe that we can pretty much cover it if each student can hold to their 1,000. We think that because the car show this past year give us a little bit of a buffer to start into this year. And then we usually get, I think it was around 3,500 last year that our raffle alone brought in. So that's a really big chunk for us too. So I really believe that we can make those ends meet very easily.
Great. Just a quick follow-up. So you have a bottle drive portion. Can people just bring their bottles to Ruper's or do they and say?
We have tags.
The, yeah, you're more than welcome. The plumbing shop is right behind the sign. You're more than welcome to let me know to bang on the door. We'll take them and we go over to Ruper's every couple of weeks.
We do have
To meet the
tags
count.
that have to go on them in order for it to be identified as our account. So we could give you tags and you could drop them off.
Okay. And so when you say plumbing, can you say exactly like the address, like where people would need?
Oh, LRTC, it's at LRTC. It's the main, there's a,
The white sign that says LRTC, there's a garage door behind it. That's my shop.
Okay.
So we'll take them in there and we'll go over every week.
and that's 156 East Ave.
Okay, perfect.
Lewiston.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Member Bowden.
I don't have any questions, but I say it every year. I'm going to say it again. This is so important, and it's structured so perfectly for these kids. They're busy the entire time. It gives them so many opportunities. I'm a huge fan. I'm also biased. I'm the mother of a student who went to this a couple years ago. And so if no one else has questions, I'd like to make the motion to approve the 2026 Skills USA National trip to Atlanta.
Okay, moved by Member Bowden, seconded by Member Glant. Are there any further questions or any other discussion? Okay, I just want to clarify before we vote. So there is no need to approve any funding from the school committee. Okay, that's good news. Okay.
Right.
Yes, yeah, that sounds good. Okay, so again, moved by Member Bowden, seconded by Member Glant. So we'll call the roll, I believe, starting with Member Eames this time.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
at large,
Yes.
Ward 1,
Yes.
City Council,
Yes.
Ward 7,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 4.
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you
Have a
very
great trip.
much.
Thank you for being here. Okay, so that brings us to agenda item number 6, which is to review and potentially vote on the first read of the following policies, BBA and BCA. Who is presenting this one?
That would be me. These two policies have some minor changes to them. Some of them being just words like instead of school unit, it says school district to stay consistent with our other policies. So BBA, you'll see, BCA, you'll see many of those just minor tweaks, some additions and subtractions of a few words, nothing substantial. And then BBA, again, some minor tweaks and then some additional wording just for clarification purposes. So nothing substantial, just some revisions, but minor ones.
Thank you. Any questions for the assistant superintendent? I did have one question just to be sure. So where it adds in similar mandates from the state and national levels of government, that's nothing specific that's prompting that. It's just to kind of cover our bases. Okay, thank you. Member Bowden.
I'd like to make the motion to pass the first read of the policies listed A and B.
Okay, is there a second?
Second?
Okay, so moved by Member Bowden and seconded by Member Harper. Any other discussion before we vote? Yes, Member Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking at BCA number or letter C, where it adds in or their opinions, was that like just typical language used in the updates? Or how did that come about? Just curious.
So that was a addition from main school management, the sample policies that they give us to use to reference. So there wasn't anything specific as it related to just this committee. It was more of a general addition.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, if you could go ahead and call the roll, starting with Member Eames.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Sorry, I was not used to being second up. Yes.
at large,
Yes.
Ward 1,
Yes.
City Council,
Yes.
Ward 7,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 4.
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0.
Okay, thank you. So that brings us to agenda item number 7, which is to review items for consideration and establish a framework for building school committee goals. I'll let the superintendent start this.
So there were a number of things in the packet for you, some of them extensive, but not necessarily that you would read through all of them here in the meeting, but wanted you to have background as it relates to the comprehensive needs assessments, which is the process we use for our schools as it relates to title funds. But there's a lot of data work in there and a lot of meetings that occur to align goals to the different provisions. So I just wanted you to have access to those. And then we also shared the mission, vision, and strategic priorities, which I'm going to just put up on the screen here for just a second. So this is the document that was approved. We had looked back in 2023, so it's dated. But we wanted you to also have this framework because we have been using this as our anchor in our thinking when we get together and we have different conversations about essentially our goals. And you can see the mission, vision, and then under strategic priorities, excuse me, we have well-being, relationships, instruction, equity, and pathways. So for some of you, we're very familiar with this because you were part of the process. But for others, wanted to make sure you knew that there is a something out there that is guiding the work that we do as we look at the next version of goals. And to that end, I also want to share just a working document to try to roll the ball and get things going. Let's see here. I scrolled beyond it. So what we're trying to do is start a conversation or continue a conversation that I think everyone on the committee has expressed importance in. And as we work through the school district goals and objectives, I quoted the policy that exists. It's policy ADA, not to be confused with ADA compliance. And so just that the school committee recognizes that the importance of the goals and for efficient operation of the schools, and how we carry the set of goals forward is really what this document says to someone like me is the school committee has adopted these goals. These are priorities of ours. We need to talk about how we're going to do our very best to reach or attain things in the specific areas of the goals. And so I put a couple of the notes in here, which I just referenced. This graphic is connected to the CNAs, but really just I was trying to get from, 87-page documents down to just a quick little visual of, the goal of the CNAs is to improve student outcomes with 3 specific areas of focus: reading, math, and attendance, which I believe are cornerstones of the work that we should be working on. And then there are some lighter pieces in here with specific language of percent growth and efforts around that. And so moving more recent in time, there have been conversations around what themes you want to have discussions about. So we tried to capture those themes on here. We did put some components in here around keeping it simple really was the goal, I think, but to have discussions around is academic success, for example, a good theme to discuss further as a group. And if it were, what would be the language around that and what kinds of measures would we be looking at? I do think it's important to have measures. I don't think we want to shoot ourselves in the foot, but we want to know where we're at and what we're working on to improve. So we have the themes that include, again, academic success, expanding student pathways, school safety, attendance, and family engagement. And so we wanted to just open a discussion there. And I know that Phoenix has been a part of the discussion as we prepared for agenda items. So if you want to add at this point as far as next steps and how we want to hold the conversation.
Yeah, so I guess there's a couple levels for the committee to discuss right now. One is, as has come up before, we could set up a totally separate time only to talk about this if the committee feels that would be easier, more fruitful just to talk through it. So I suppose that's the first question. The second is, we can start to talk more about the specifics now. And just to restate some of the earlier conversation from I don't even remember how long ago it was now, a few weeks at least. I do think it would be best if the committee does get to a place of actually, voting on some goals, to really kind of put a stake in the ground and say, yeah, this is what we want, the district to focus on, over this next period of time. And, I do, again, though, I do want to leave it open to, we could talk it through, and if everyone just loves it, we could maybe get to that point tonight. But I know that others have said that, they'd be interested in a workshop approach or something like that. And, I'm really just open to what the committee would like to do, in terms of reaching that point of mutual agreement in terms of how to prioritize. And yeah, these notes that Jake got together, I think it was kind of building on what I think we agreed on, at least the categories, right, in terms of academic success and so on. I know when we last spoke, it was kind of going back and forth in terms of how strictly to include measurements and things like that. And I know there's probably will be some disagreement in terms of, or at least more to talk about in terms of how to measure academic progress and things like that. I would certainly suggest that even if we're not setting a number target, we're at least agreeing to what is worth looking at, whether it's graduation rate or other things like that, just so I think it's too easy to have something abstract that then it doesn't really have much force in terms of, helping admin or staff or anyone else really plan and figure out what to do around it. So those are just some thoughts. And again, I think it'd be helpful to talk, just one, how the committee would like to approach this in terms of reaching agreement, and then, we could get into the specifics if the committee would like. So I saw Member Gallant had a hand up.
Excuse me, I've got a sore throat. So I think having a separate workshop, excuse me, for this would be good, because we wouldn't feel rushed, or at least I wouldn't. So I think that's a good idea, is to carve out a separate date or time and maybe allow a couple hours, just to go through everything and make sure we all understand. And, I think it has to be measurable. I think it doesn't have to be exact, but it should be measurable. All goals should be measurable to some degree. That way we know where we were and where we are and where we're heading. Maybe like a quarterly goals, quarterly updates as to where things are. So that would be my thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Member Hawkins.
I'm going to agree with Sue on the workshop idea. I think Donna, sorry, I'm tired. We all have I think we all agree with the same goals, but some of us come at them from very different directions, and having the time to really discuss and find common ground is going to be really important, especially if these goals are going to be pushed to actually get somewhere. And I think a couple hours in a meeting after working all day is going to be a bit of a drag on most of us. I don't know all of us, but most of us. And being able to I'd give up a Saturday. I would, because this is important. I don't want to, but I will, because this is important.
Member Jensen, I saw you had a hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would agree with that idea. I would even suggest a retreat. The way I kind of envisioned the process happening was like using whiteboards. I mean, a little bit messier than like a typical meeting or workshop setting would probably allow for. And just a lot like back and forth kind of that way. I mean, I can't imagine it taking more than a couple hours itself, but it would make sense to, I mean, I'd be willing to come in on a Saturday to do it. I could certainly, make it a weeknight too, if possible, but I'm definitely amenable that way. And I would certainly agree. I apologize, I forgot who said it, but I think we generally have a kind of a similar understanding of things that we want to like look for and see in our goals. We just may have different ideas of like how to set up the goals themselves, like what to set up as the themes and like the goals themselves. I mean, I kind of just made like a little rough draft document here myself of like, to me, I would have three themes, like one being increased student engagement, increased family engagement, then increased, supports in different ways, and everything else that we do could kind of fall under those categories. But again, you guys might have a different idea of how to set that up and frame it. But I also want to make sure we set it up in a way that allows for our superintendent and administration to develop the objectives so that we're not micromanaging. So I think we can get it done in like a couple hours. I just think the retreat's probably the best method to go about doing that.
Member Reeves?
Yes, I agree with the idea of dedicating a couple of hours, all of us together to hash this out and figure out the broad themes. And then I also think maybe instead of meeting quarterly about all of them, we could rotate which theme we deal with per quarter. So, the first quarter we're focusing on one goal and the next quarter we're focusing on the other. So that's sort of planned, pre-planned, understandable. We could work it out ahead of time, know what to expect. Yeah, and whether it's an actual number or a trend, I think is negotiable, but I don't need numbers. I just think trends are what we need. Thanks.
Yeah, I do want to say that would still be my plan, is to dedicate a meeting to a theme, whatever it may be. And frankly, I mean, we are partway through the second quarter of this calendar year, so I think we'll have to do it a little faster than one per quarter. But still, I think that would be that would be my thinking as well. Yeah, Member Harper?
Thank you. I agree that having some dedicated time outside of the space might be good. I would love to do it on a weeknight instead of a weekend personally, but I'll be flexible. I appreciated the title or the needs assessment information that was shared. I definitely didn't make it through the volume of that, but I did read through one of them like fairly closely, and I was like, oh, okay, there's a lot of work that's gone into this process, or at least process like for each school to be thinking about specific goals. And I guess I would love to just understand a little bit more about that process, to understand like what are the and I probably could have lifted this out if I was like really looking at it super, super closely, but just like I'm sure there's specific questions that they ask and things that they are looking for, which maybe don't encompass everything that our school committee might be looking for or at. So just like thinking about to what and could it be useful to incorporate all of that good thinking and good work that's already happened into our goals, or is there an advantage to have them be somewhat distinct? I'm just thinking out loud, and thinking about the schedule. I know also, our superintendent put up the policy that says that the school committee shall set goals, and we have this new rotating election process, so that makes things very challenging to I'm not sure if it's a great use of time for each school committee to every time there's a new batch of people every year to go through the process again. So I don't know what that means, but just wanted to say that out loud. I know that there were some public meetings last year around these goals, and I was just curious also, what is the committee's thought around community involvement and what came out of that process, and, not wanting to honor the input that was received. And so I just have I think I have a few different questions about process, I guess, and what makes the most sense in terms of honoring work that's already been done. And yeah.
Sure. I do want to say I think, yeah, oh yeah, he scroll back up to it. I think it says somewhere to do the develop annual goals based on input, et cetera, et cetera. I would agree that I think reviewing them annually does make sense, but to start from scratch every year would be not very helpful for the committee or the district staff, would be my opinion. And I think it would be, but it's every committee's prerogative, certainly could throw it out. But I think at least my thinking around this would be to consider these longer term, kind of goals that certainly can be changed in the interim, but I think that would be more valuable. That's my opinion. Other comments of this? Yeah, Member Eames.
Well, our mission, vision, strategic priority is a few years old, and we've been okay with it for a few years now. So on that model, I think we could revisit the goals every year, but not necessarily tinker with them greatly any given year. Thanks.
Okay, so I'm hearing, sorry, did you have a hand up? Okay. Yeah, hearing pretty clearly folks would like a separate time to discuss this. I'm hoping we can find a good weeknight time. I do need to talk to the superintendent about our next agenda or two, and so maybe we can even take away or eat into that usual meeting time, and which we have done in other circumstances for other topics to essentially have a workshop before starting a regular meeting. So yeah, anyways, we can sort out what the best time to do that would be. But I don't want to leave this discussion before trying to be clear about what needs to happen at that workshop. So, what do you see as maybe the information you need? What do you see as the even just from this document that strikes you as like, ooh, I really want to dig into that more. So I see that as a potential issue. I want to be sure that we go into that time set up for success, and aren't just kind of randomly opening it up for open-ended conversation. So anything stand out in terms of yeah, just how to set that up, topics you want to cover, things like that? Member Hawkins.
I'd be interested in information if it's available as to what's been done past and currently towards the engagement for parents and students. Because I know that's something we're always working on. And I'm hoping that some fresh eyes and ears, maybe we can find something that we're overlooking or we need a different way to implement. See if I have any input or we have any input that could help. Because I know as you're driving a school bus, there are plenty of parents who do not understand that, oh, this is a half day. And yes, you need to come get your kindergartner because we can't leave them on the side of the road. So that tells me there's either they're just not looking at the schedule or whatever. But I know there's always improvements to be made. And if fresh eyes can help, I'm happy to do so. The graduation rate. I'm a mom. I have a kid that got his GED instead of graduating. I understand it can be a struggle with kids, and anything we can do to lighten that, I'm very interested in how we can make that happen.
Member Eames and then Member Gillian.
I would concur with the discussion about graduation. And we just came out of a subcommittee meeting on curriculum where that also came up. So I do think that there can be a concerted effort this year to work on the graduation process, the rules about it, the pathways toward it, et cetera. So it seems like a good place to focus this year.
Member Jensen. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I had called Member Glant prior to that. Do you still want to make a comment? Sorry.
I'm just looking at the, excuse me, oh, can't speak. I'm still looking at the themes. So there's academic success, there's school safety. Did I miss one?
So there was academic success, expanding student pathways, school safety, attendance, and family engagement.
I just was wondering. Excuse me. Give me a minute. You can go ahead, ask.
Sure thing. Yeah, Member Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess like me personally, there's not a lot of specific information I would inquire about that needs to be brought. I think a lot of it is just kind of how we want to structure this ourselves, and then let administration kind of fill in those blanks as needed. The objectives of how to accomplish the goals. Um, obviously, I'm just one person up here, but like personally, I don't feel like the graduation rate is necessarily in our control, so I wouldn't want to like necessarily set that as a goal itself. Um, to me, it's more of an outcome than anything else. And I think if we set up goals that can lead to that success, that would be the way to go. Like as a sports team, you're not really going to, you want to win the championship, but your goals are really going to be around like, improving your hitting, improving your infield defense, things, your pitching, things like that. And those are the things that'll lead to the championship. And so the graduation rate is more of a reflection of the economics of our city than anything else. And so I think goals that would help towards that would also help towards other things that would be able for us to kind of show off as a district and do a lot of good for the students in our district and for the community. So that's just, I guess, kind of like the mindset I'm going into it. So like as far as like what I'd really need from administration, I mean, nothing really a whole lot right now. I think it's really just us kind of getting organized and how we want to set this up and then kind of moving from there. So, and part of that too is, I definitely want to make sure the burden is on us to do this. And I don't want to put it, I want to put as little as possible on administration until we get them the kind of framework to kind of let them do their thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Member Glant.
Thank you. I was thinking we could do like a workshop and take each theme individually. That way, the best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. So why don't we just take like one theme at a time with a workshop behind it and give us an hour or however you want. And then that way we feel like we've accomplished something. Because if we can just separate it out a little bit, then I think we might be able to accomplish what we're looking to do.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that is right, but also we need to decide what the themes are. Not just the themes, but the specifics and around the goals before we even get there. Yeah, so all kind of in one after the other, I suppose. Yes, Member Harper.
Did we not vote to approve the themes? Or was it just like a thumbs up that we did? I thought we had approved like those four themes, 4 or 5.
I think, yeah, I don't know if it was a vote or not, but it wasn't, these must be the themes. It was more, let's start with that and see where it goes. So.
Member Bowden.
Thank you. I don't have a lot to say about this tonight because I wanna talk about it in our workshop. But when we talk about graduation rates and we talk about can we get information on what graduation rates are, it's hard to compare Lewiston to anybody. And a lot of times I know Lewiston gets compared to Auburn with graduation rates, but I've recently learned that Auburn only requires 20 credits to graduate, where we require 24 to graduate. So I just want to ask that if you're gathering information that you're mindful of like what you're comparing us to. And if there is another school district in the state that still requires 24 credits like us and has a similar demographic to us, like that would be a comparison. But I think anything else would just be useless information. So that's all I wanted to say. And I'm not going to get into any of the nitty gritty of my goals and that sort of thing until we have our workshop.
Okay. Yeah, I do think I would suggest that we do try to think of what we can, in some ways, compare to ourselves in our past to know that we are talking fairly, because Lewiston is a pretty singular district, I think. And that does make it difficult to fairly compare. And related to that, and related to what Member Jensen said earlier, I think we might need to think through, are we setting goals around outputs versus outcomes? I know that's a different distinction that we sometimes need to make for conversations like this. Graduation rate being sort of an ultimate outcome that has a lot of factors influencing it, some of which we can affect, some not. But we still want students to graduate and to graduate knowing things. And so you kind of need to thread the needle a little bit and having some things that you can act on directly and some things that you do want to see at the end of the day, even if you can't totally control them. So we'll have to sort that out, I think. Any other thoughts before we move on to the next agenda item? Member Harper.
Yeah, sorry. Maybe
just ask our superintendent, do you feel like do you have any questions or need anything else from us?
I think a workshop can be helpful. I think my quick disaggregating of what I just heard for feedback is I feel like the committee might want it to be a little messier at first and to have your own big sheet, or we can do some prompting and facilitate getting your thoughts to a piece of paper and then having a discussion about what those thoughts were. I would envision it likely to be multi-step, but you might be surprised how much information and background we have, just the two of us sitting there, that we can produce instantly. And if we can't, we can certainly bring it back to you. But I think that might help formulate more consensus. And I do think we could do a workshop at a regular meeting, especially if we're going to add one in May. Um, I think just to anchor our work and create that rotation we need. We want to get this done.
Yeah, follow up.
Yeah, I think that could make a lot of sense. And in terms of the title pieces, I mean, I can do my own homework coming into that, but I would love to think about like, I mean, there's so much data analysis that the teams have done at each school to figure out what is going to make a difference for attendance, for reading and math, and a bunch of things. And so it might feel useful. I know I didn't look at the district one, and maybe the district one a good one to look at to think of like what are the overall goals that we might be able to lift up? Yeah.
Yes, and I would also say there's kind of portions in those big documents that they mimic each other across the board, and then there's more unique for each space. But when we look at our district as a whole, one building may have a slightly different variation over some others, but as a whole, from a school committee perspective with your goals, District 1 could be a good place to start. But the themes are consistent. We are intentional when we work with the teams to build the CNAs, that they align to things we know we want to get better at: reading, writing, math, attendance, engagement. Those are all kind of woven in, like simple but yet very complex at the same time.
Okay. So I think we will wrap this agenda item then, and there will be more to come at future meetings. So that brings us then to agenda item number 8, which is to receive an update on learning space concept plan on Main Street. And I'll let the superintendent lead this one.
Okay, so I put slides up. I did share these with you. This is not everything that has been discussed, but I also want to make sure you're aware that we're using words like concept and potential, and we are, as aggressively as we can, seeking funding outside of Lewiston, but also seeking capital improvement funds within Lewiston to try to bring some things up to use. Just historical information, during COVID, when some of the provisions started to come out about having additional space to spread people out, when we looked at our schools, the stay 6 feet away, lunches, like all of those parameters became really tricky in a hurry. And one of the ideas, and I don't know if it was Bill, but somebody on the team came up with an idea of, I wonder what the condition of that building is, because when COVID kind of happened, it was running, and then it just was not running. And so the thinking was we might be able to go in and do a clean and use the space for actual school in the second half of 20 or 21. So we cold called. I actually reached out to the president of Central Maine Healthcare at the time, and it was something that had to go to the board. It wasn't a decision they had made, and of course, COVID had thrown a wrench in just about everything. But then the property was then later listed, and obviously working with the school committee at the time, an offer was made, or they approved making an offer. The building itself is 4 floors One of those floors is a bit underground. There are some side windows you can see here to the left of the building in front of that car. There's two sections of like cube glass, but it's not great. Definitely not great for teaching and learning to be underground. Overall, the building's just under 50,000 square feet. It was initially built in 1921. There were numerous renovations, but the latest one that, to our knowledge, was in 1987. We have all the prints, all the architecture for that particular layout. But at that point in time, they also segmented this building into, I think, 5 different kind of tenant properties within one building. And so that's something that we have to be mindful of as we do this work. But it has needs, right? I've been upfront with people the whole time. This is not move-in ready. It definitely has needs, but it's not out of reach. We did have an assessment done by Haley Ward before the purchase was made. They were upfront about that. The heat works, but it's probably due for replacement. The roof seems sound, but it could spring a leak at any time. Water systems have been on and off, so you could have dried up seals that when you put the pressure back to it, it could leak and those kinds of things. There's also a wall in the downstairs section where there's a big mechanical room that has water that gets in. It might be from the chimney, it may be a foundation thing. But we've also found since they have done work in that section, the wall is not leaking. And so it could have just been a lack of drainage and runoff space on that curbing. But again, that would all be further assessed. Question does come up a lot. How did you pay for that? Where did you get the money for that? So I actually took this picture from the document that we submitted to the school committee and to the city council to have the funding approved. But we had numerous bonds, and you can see the bond ID. So these are capital improvement bonds that were acquired and then, put to use. But as those sit, they also gather interest. And so when you see interest and premium, this is money that was unused and or gained interest sitting in account. And then the combination of all those, including the bond premium and interest earned, we were able to, through process, reallocate $1.108 million. And that was where the funds were taken from to put in an offer that was received to do the assessment of the building through the engineering company, those kinds of things. And the problems we seek to solve, well, there's many, but I wanted to keep it simple. But realistically, one idea that I have in my mind is looking at our constraints of space and staff and inclusion opportunities. When we look at bringing child development services, these are very young kids right now. The state takes care of their services. We will be responsible for them. There's been a 4-year phase-in for this effort. Some districts took that on year 1 with an incentive. Some did year 2 with different incentives. Some did it year 3. And then all I kept saying to Karen is logistically, where are we going to put them? And can we hire the staff? So it made more sense to me to push off that commitment with the state. The problem is that 4-year transition is coming due. And so not this next school year, but the school year after, as written right now, we will be taking on students identified for child development services. And it's 3 and 4-year-olds because we already provide services to 5 and above. And so one thing that we've seen when we start to do some inclusion pieces is 3 and 4-year-olds who have high needs, they should be developmentally appropriately around kids that are like them in age and whatnot. So the idea of, well, if we did something at 287 and then we put CDS kids on one floor, they would never mingle with other kids. They would only be around each other. And so we thought, I think it'd be better to have those students around pre-K, K, playground, all of those kinds of things. But with our elementary schools so full, how would we do that? And one idea became 6th graders who they're not necessarily middle school mature, a lot of them yet. Could we move some 6th graders out of some of our schools or all of our elementaries if it fits and put them at 287 Main and do something really different for that group of kids, try to really engage them? And that's when we started writing the grants and looking at other ideas around how to do that. At one point in time, there was an idea about a 6 to 8 model, but if we did that, we need more space. So it wouldn't fit at the middle school. So that's, I think, still on the table somewhere. But when we engaged Harriman, the architect firm, They could really help us figure out how much space is needed for kids. What's the ratio of square foot or footage per student at what age? Other restrictions too that came up, which I think I shared some of these pieces in the slides, but um, I won't read through all of this, but the idea of developing this idea called the shop, which was really just that hands-on learning piece, but also making things with your hands and not just modern makerspace, but also some really basic, simple machine type things like how does a screw work? And can you make birdhouses and picnic tables or things to beautify our community? Those kinds of ideas. Um, the building on Main could be that building. We have secured resources to remove items and clean. We did get LCIP funding using. I put supported models like the spaces, like our various firehouses that have been built over the last several years. Lewiston Police Department, they started with capital improvement plan dollars to do exactly this, research, could this space work, have an assessment done, start to build a concept, and then ask for additional funds in sequential years after. So we did the same thing. And so that's how this worked. But for 2 years, we've been pushing it off. And so we're hopeful to get some more support this year. Again, we have applied for numerous grants and requested capital improvement funds. Many businesses, so when we submit some of these grants, we ask them for we ask them for money for power. When we go through the grant process, we have to ask people for letters of support. So I've tried to engage businesses from contractors to other production areas in Lewiston, and every single business owner I've talked to has produced a letter almost instantly and is very supportive and have said, if you get this project moving in the right direction, legitimately, call me back. I want to help with equipment, with spaces, whatever I can do. So it's good energy, but we need that springboard. We have been looking at the potential for each floor, but what we're thinking is, again, if the funding, make the spaces flexible for multi-use. We have this bubble. Actually, Phoenix shared some data with me over the weekend. Haven't really talked about it yet, but we have this, I wouldn't say bubble of enrollment, but our enrollment size at the lower levels is much bigger than any other district in Maine as far as the age grouping of your kids when you talk about your total enrollment. And I don't know if you want to chime in to say that better than what I just shared, but there's, I guess I'm saying if the space is flexible, maybe it is sixth grade when it opens up. Maybe it becomes 6 to 8 when that larger grouping of kids goes through. But also the building that is the most statistically overused right now is Lewiston High School, according to the architects. I think that's paired with the technical center. So then you start talking about, well, does the high school need some of that technical center wing? Do you move medical programs that we currently have to Main Street and have a partnership with the medical? Like, those are just different ideas for flexible space use. But if we don't build it too constricted, we would have opportunities to use it differently. We have looked at, again, the district-wide needs when we talk about spaces and space use. Factored in projected growth. As you know, from ongoing construction in our community, more housing is likely to produce more student enrollments in our area. Again, doing something engaging and keeping our current ratios in mind. So then we get into what are the different program considerations. And so when we talk about what floors can be used for what things, I want to highlight on this slide the 2 floors classrooms or the all 4 classrooms components. This tells us how many students could fit in each scenario, if you will. But also note that they broke it out in different ways because you can't do certain things. And I'm going to say this wrong, and Bill, I don't know if you recall how it went, but you cannot ask kids under a certain age to vacate a building more than 2 floors. And you don't really want to use the first floor of this building for too much education, like classroom learning spaces, because it's underground. But then if you put them on the 3rd and 4th floor, you've exceeded code for vacating a building. That's why so many schools are 2 floors. I didn't know this. But you can't evacuate with children of a certain age or less too far, if that makes sense. And so this talked about a breakdown of, if you go middle school students, that middle bullet there. If you use just 2 floors, you could have 140 middle school students go to school at the site on Main Street. If you used all 4 floors as classrooms, you could double that. You could do 280. If you used the first floor for some level of reception, storage, maybe a boardroom, and then you had students on the next 3 floors, which is feasible if they're middle school. Again, that number would be somewhere in the middle of those two. So we started talking about potential uses, and I think when we sat with them, Bill, they had what, 4 or 5 different potential uses, and we narrowed that down. They were really talking a lot about high school use for the building, and that's what pushed us more to this more flexible space. I want to look at their data again as it relates to the high school piece because I think they're incorporating LRTC enrollment numbers, and many LRTC enrollment numbers are duplicate because they go to Lewiston High School, but they also count for LRTC. And so I want to make sure they have that right because I think that building could sustain a bit of a push or do something like modulars for a few years if you had just a bubble. But if this is done in that way, flexible, you could do some different things. So I have maps that are just kind of color coded, but one option could be the first floor being a boardroom, training space, and some facility storage. Floors 2 and 3 could be those hands-on learning spaces. Floor 4 of the overflow from Dingley, some of that could be used for that overflow or for offices. One of the things that we've talked about throughout this project and part of our LCIP request is if things like offices at Dingley moved to 287 Main as part of this project, and I mean if, what would Dingley become? And we've talked about a special purpose program, but we also have that inclusion piece. Could it be like a day treatment type program, which might be appropriate to be more of a separate piece? Those kinds of conversations. But in this particular option, Dingley would not be used. In option 2, Dingley would just remain as is, and we would still have overflow concerns, but it adds a 3rd floor of learning spaces.
Sorry, just to clarify, when it says not used in this option, that means it stays as it. I'm not sure what the distinction is between those two.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay. It's not that you would
I
get rid
pulled
of
that
the
graphic
building.
off their slide.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right. In both of these options, well, floor 4 could be used for administrative purposes, and Dingley could be not in use.
At all.
Right.
Okay, all right.
So
Something to
there's some
discuss more
distinction.
later, maybe. Okay.
Yeah. But I don't, the other thing that we came to is we wouldn't fit on 1 floor, I don't believe. And when we're already too big for Dingley and we wouldn't fit on a floor there, when we look at space use and the goal of having different opportunities for kids, it feels like classrooms would be a smart approach to this.
Member Bowden, you had a.
I just have a quick Dingley specific question. If it's not in use, can we sell it and make money off of it?
So there's a whole process to decommission a school property belongs to the city. I should say decommission because it wouldn't necessarily be decommissioned, but my understanding is that yes, you can sell a structure as long as it's no longer needed for the operation. Harder to sell schools that were funded by more recent dollars or federal things. When you get into the source of the funding, it can limit what you can do with the structure and what have you. Dingley, I don't see would be a big issue. I want to research it, but I don't see obstacles there. Whereas like Connor's, terrible example because it's so new. There's state funding that's still being paid. There's amortization scales. Like we wouldn't be able to just let go of that. So kind of questions.
Yeah, there were a bunch of hands, but are they clarifying questions for what the superintendent has presented so far? Or can we just get through? Okay.
This just has some maps to it, so it kind of gives you a visual. I don't know if it's helpful to go through that, but.
Okay. Yeah, Member Reams.
I think that the front and the back of the building have different levels. So the 2 floor restriction would work for the back, would be bad for the back of the building, but for the front of the building, it might be okay.
It's feasible, except it gives you one exit, and you can't have just one exit. So that's where It took me a minute to process it because I
For
was
the
like, well,
little
that
ones.
would be 2 floors. And they're like, well, you can't send everybody out that one exit. And that building, if you're above the second floor, only has two ways out. I mean, you would need access to both to have code.
Member Glant, you had a clarifying question?
Yes, for the littles, what would be a playground? And for the junior or the middle school, would they have to use the high school for their fields, or if they're going to do sports and things like that?
So both of these concept plans or pitches do not use this building for littles at all. It would pull sixth graders out initially, at least some schools, and put the littles in spaces where there's already things like pre-K and things like that. As far as fields go, at least out of the gate, I would say that sixth graders don't have certain things like a sixth grade team, but there are opportunities that do use spaces in schools, the gyms, the fields around, things like that. We would probably still do that. We'd have to figure out access, I think, to those spaces.
Yeah, you had a
I
question.
just had a brief comment about the issue with 2 floors and little people. It's the same reason that my monitor stands in the middle of the bus to hold the big kids back so that the little legs can get out before they're run over. They are very little legs. They can only go so far so fast. Um, and having seen some of the downsides of not. Um, I'm very glad we're not separating the littles from the slightly bigger littles because that interaction is very, very important to help them develop. Um, I have siblings on my bus. One is pre-K, one is second grade. And seeing the development of them being able to interact on the bus and then at home and then come back on my bus. We underestimate how important siblings and interaction with older children can be. It is very, very important. So I'm glad that's not in this because it sounds ideal until you see the lack of interaction and growth from it.
So some of these are going to look similar. I'm just kind of cruise through it. So this is that first floor. You can see the door that goes to the back side of the building towards the parking lot. Again, largely underground. If you went there years ago, this is where they had a lot of imaging in the back. They had I don't know if it was a MRI machine or a CAT scan. It was a big piece of equipment. MRI, yeah. So to the left side of the building, think of that being where like the MRI area was. There is a set of steps once you come in, but the thinking is they could look at staff training and meeting space, which is something that we fall short of in our district, and also a boardroom, as instead of us having to keep moving to different schools because of conflicts in calendars and schedules, what have you. And then floor two, you'll see that this looks this very similar on both, but it's just hands-on, kind of big, open type spaces. Floor three, very similar because those two floors structurally are the same. I made a push for floors 2 and 3 to be shop-like spaces because of the height of the ceilings. The way the building was built, it was a car dealership, it was a tire retreading plant, but those 2 floors particularly have pretty high ceilings, which would allow for, dust removal, just that shop kind of space to it. This is floor 4 if it's all classrooms. And you can see a flex space in the middle. We started talking about flex space being, do kids eat there? Do they just pick up food there? Do you have a warming station? How does this work? Because the building, while it's 50,000 square feet, I wish it were bigger because it doesn't lend itself to having a full cafeteria. But we already navigate that now in some spaces like Longley where there's no cafeteria. We have lunches prepared and then it gets brought over each day. This is the alternate fourth floor, and what they try to take is the existing corridors and kind of section them up. It doesn't feel like a great layout, but it's just a concept. And then we also asked them if they could provide some images to try to put a visual to it. So this is a real rendering from RSU 10, the middle school they just built. This would be a STEM space. See the robot legs on the left. Lots of cabinets and storage, things like that. This is Nashua Middle School, New Hampshire. This is a real picture of the classroom, I believe. And you can see how they're doing legitimate woodworking projects. They've got benches and vices and storage and things like that. So constraints, I've already mentioned some of them, and I won't just keep going over them, but we do have to consider, like I said, those components of how do we fit in the space, knowing the logistical constraints, and avoiding learning spaces that don't have windows. Again, just a concept. I think these are ideas that are feasible. I would also say that the grants that we're writing and submitting, they're not specifically tied to the building. They're tied to a concept and a space. And so if funding goes a certain way, it could be that we look at other spaces. And I get asked all the time, well, what about the mill? Because a company's vacating that space. Could you use that? And then that's when we start looking at logistics of safety and exit and bus drop and bus pickup and playground and no playground and all of those components. We're going to continue to seek out funding. You never know with funding until it happens. And a lot of grants that we've applied for, we can ask a big number, but they might come through and say, we can offer you this. And we're not going to say no, likely. So we'll continue that push. There's a lot of support, as you know, from elected officials. You all signed off on the letter. I mentioned businesses, but I also think a concept like this, if we can get this rolling, people will seek this out regionally. They'll want to know how we're doing what we're doing. And next steps are dependent on growing additional support, mostly financial, and just keeping up the effort, because I don't even think that this next few months, when we'll know more about different grants or whether or not we got LCIP, the push is going to have to continue for this to play out. And that was all I had for slides.
So before we open it up for the committee discussion, could you just clarify the school committee's role and needs at this point? Because this is something that's been, it bubbles up over the years. And I think it would be helpful to just specify a little bit, when and where the committee needs to act, on funding, on approving plans for this type of model, generally for an academic model, all the way down to specific use of building and construction spending in certain ways. So could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think conceptually, to make sure the will of the committee is known that this is a concept we are behind. Go seek out funding wherever you can find it with the team. I think that's an important thing to have. I think ongoing agreement, if 287 Main Street is the space that we're looking to do this specific work in at this point in time, it doesn't hurt our city to have that building rehabilitated. And it doesn't hurt our kids to have that opportunity, but the committee would be making a level of commitment that until it is that, or when it becomes that, if that's the direction that we go, there's some associated costs. I think we put in $108,000 this year in the budget that was approved, and that's for heat and just upkeep. We don't want it to go to waste. We don't want it to not get checked on and freeze up or have other issues that we could have prevented. But we also don't want to do that forever. We have to get a critical mass moving forward and go from there. So support from the committee, I think, is important in that you're supporting the concept. If you hear funding ideas, let us know. And then just continue to be open-minded about what next steps are, knowing that we're going to have some kind of constraint at some point. Because if we don't get funding and we don't have dollars, then this is not going to be helpful. If we do get funding, we do have dollars, the next step in our concept plan would be to bring this back to you, obviously announce that we have this much funding support, and seek your approval to take the next step, which would be not just doing a concept plan, but getting into architectural prints of everything from electrical, phone, plumbing, heating, all the HVAC components. So that would be the next step should we acquire some funding.
Okay, lots to discuss, I think. Yeah, Member Bowden, go ahead.
Thank you. So I just want to start by saying that, Jake, I think your head and your heart are in the right place with this. But and this is a huge but, I disagree with you that this is within reach. Like wholeheartedly disagree with you. This is within reach. And just looking over this concept, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of secluding sixth graders into a building that doesn't even have a cafeteria. Like that to me, I mean, have there been any studies done where we've taken just sixth grade out of buildings and put them by themselves and secluded them? Like, is that actually a thing? That doesn't, I don't, anyway, I'm going to move on from.
Yes, the concept. But saying things like, "Hey, we can't do just six," yeah, I think you would research that. And if it makes sense to do multiple grades, you could consider that. If it's a pressing thing of we have to have a cafeteria, then you look at the prints with the architects to say, no, we're willing to give up classroom space to have a cafeteria. How many kids would fit if it was 5, 6, 7 or 6, 7, 8 and that's all work that we can have done pretty quickly.
Okay. Today is day one where residents in this city received a piece of paper that told them what their new reevaluation is on their homes, and people are losing their minds today. And over the next year, if this isn't implemented this year and it's implemented next year, we are going to see hundreds, if not thousands of homes go up for sale in the city, and our tax base is leaving. And that is a harsh reality. We do not have lucrative economic growth and development happening in the city. And I just don't see how we don't have the money to do this. We don't have the funds. And it's going to have to be fully grant funded because it's not going to come from taxpayers because we're losing our tax base in this city. And that's a whole larger discussion, but this is the only thing going through my mind as I'm sitting here listening to you give this presentation. This is so far out of reach. I don't know how you see this as within reach. That statement alone, I just don't understand. But I personally cannot and will not get behind this.
I saw other hands earlier. Other comments from committee members? Do you mind if I ask Member Bowden to clarify? You're saying you couldn't get behind this, the concept around sixth grade only specifically, or just anything related?
I just think as a whole, I was on the committee and I was part of the committee that approved your purchase of this building. Because we understood that money had to go towards something of this nature and it couldn't just be redistributed to like help out with our budget or something. Like I understood that money needed to be used specifically in a specific way. So I was like, okay, great. If we can get this and we can figure out how to make this work, this would be really great for us. But I just don't see it. The more I drive by that building and I'm watching it literally crumble on the outside, like there's chunks of that building falling off onto the ground. And there's just so much work that needs to be done. I really do think this is out of reach. I think this building, maybe the bones are good, but to turn this into what we need it to be, I mean, I don't like this concept at all. I'm just being honest. I don't like this concept. And, how much should we pay to even like see what this concept is? Like, what are we paying people to go into this building and say, oh, well, we could make this and we could do this. Like, it just seems like every turn with this building is just going to cost us more and more money that we don't have. And I don't know if that clarifies what you asked me, but I do not like the idea of just sixth grade in there. I think that's a wild idea that I can't get behind. I think sixth graders need to be with kids younger and older than them.
I think part of the reason I asked the superintendent that question just at the end of his presentation is I think also to help the committee think through what questions we should be answering. So I think one would be just what concept to pursue generally around, we know we are going to have these space challenges. And this is kind of where we've gone in terms of a way to open up space. Now we can suggest other ways to do that. So that's one question is like what to do substantively. And then I think a second question would be funding. If grant funds don't come, then what? I think that's kind of the key. And, so that's why part of why I was asking you that is, Member Bowden, is just more on the first question, like, is there a concept on the substance of how to do something like this that you, and not just for you, but for the whole committee, including myself, could get behind, and then, the funding question separate somewhat. Obviously, they're related, but just so we can clarify, because, the district is pursuing grant funds, um, that's why I was asking it that way.
So I think a concept that I could get behind is completely restructuring 287 Main Street to become a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade middle school. And with some technical stuff in there as well, some LRTC for that age. I don't see how you use that space the way that it was presented to us. I think it has to be way more than just 6th graders in there. But if that's even reasonable, like listening to you talk about, it can only be 2 floors for them to get out of the building. And I don't know if you mean just elementary school or, okay, if it's for middle school and it can be up further, cool. But that's one of the only concepts I think I can get behind with this building.
So just to be clear, these are tech spaces. That is the concept, to do hands-on learning, CTE-like spaces. And again, the problem we're trying to solve with 6th grade is CDS kids coming in. So I'm open to conversations on how will we have enough space. And there's some unknowns in our enrollments based on the construction, but I'm not taking this personal. Like, it was our charge to come up with a concept, because right now you drive by a building and you just see a square. What could it be wasn't really narrowed down enough. So this does narrow it, at least for conversational purposes.
Let's see. I saw, Member Glant and then Counselor Harriman.
Yeah, my first thought was, as what Member Bowden said, is a 6th, 7th, and 8th home for them. We know that our middle school is older, very, very old. I know they've done some upgrades, but really, that's a very old building, which I think we've tried to do a lot of things with. But I would be on board with a 6th, 7th, and 8th if all those those students could fit in that one building. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. They can't. Okay. Um, yeah, that's too bad, because then I could see having more space for for the 6th grades would be out of the other buildings, and we would have space for more space in the lower grades. So that's disappointing that we can't.
I think is when this has come up previously, it would have to be well, sorry, I should probably let the superintendent speak to this, but just when the committee has discussed the idea previously, it'd be that both the current middle school building and 287 Main Street building would be used for 6th, 7th, and 8th. It would be like having 2 middle schools, kind of. Just one would be smaller and maybe a little more specific in its programming. But is that correct? Yes. That's how it's been discussed previously, anyways, when we've talked through some different ideas. Counselor Harriman?
Yes, thank you. I also like the idea of having a 6th, 7th, and 8th model. Looking at the slideshow again, it looks like if we used all 4 floors, it would hold approximately 280 middle school students. So that would only be maybe about a third of our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade enrollment or so, or a quarter, something like that.
There's about between high 300 and 400 kids at the 6th grade level.
Okay. So, yeah, so it wouldn't be half of our 6th, 7th, and 8th, and then have the other half at the middle school, but we could maybe have an alternative program or something like that for 6th, 7th, and 8th, and then the rest of them could go to the middle school if there's enough space. I don't know if that's even possible either, but I was a little surprised at the numbers, actually, like the low number, the smallness of the numbers of students who could fit in these spaces. I was expecting it would be higher than that.
I saw Member Eames had a hand and then Member Jensen.
My point has been made. It's about a subset of sixth, seventh, and eighth graders with a more hands-on curriculum being in that space. Thank you.
Member Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are some more conversations I want to have with people in the community about this. Our agenda really only says that we're getting an update on this, not that we needed to provide any direction tonight. So I mean, the city's my constituency, so I'd be kind of hesitant to give too much direction here without the public having a chance to give input on it. And myself too, I want to do a little bit more research here. One thing I do know for sure is that space is absolutely an issue. My hope is the legislature can kind of see the light like they did with PBL and kind of realize, oh, we're not preparing school districts enough for this. We're not resourcing them enough. And they kind of pull back on the requirements for CDS. That's certainly something I'll advocate for. But if that goes through, we will absolutely need the space. And so I'm not really committing to anything right now other than saying that space is definitely an issue in the district here. And as far as future programming goes and some of the goals that we're going to set, I mean, space also kind of plays into that as well. I mean, I know I gripe about Augusta all the time, but they should have reimbursed us the tens of millions of dollars we spent on all the school additions. They should have, they should be allowing us to build an entire new middle school, paying for it entirely. So, Lewiston's in this position not because of any mismanagement, because the state doesn't know how to properly fund education, particularly its facilities here. So that's frustrating. But again, I'm going to hold off on any kind of feedback I want to give for this, if possible, until I can have those future conversations.
Right. Yeah, and we won't vote on anything tonight, but just to try to move the conversation forward a bit. Yeah, Member Harper and then Member Hawkins.
Thank you. So yeah, also just kind of providing general feedback. I certainly, I feel like it's the first time I've ever been part of a focused discussion on this, but, just knowing that the CDS requirement sounds like potentially coming, maybe not fully coming, or do we know for sure it is?
The Child Development Services is coming.
It's
The
decided.
laws, it's all in motion 3 years in.
Okay. That's what I thought. So, I mean, I think that we probably need to be, we need to be very conscientious with any potential space that the school district has, while also potentially keeping our eyes open for other buildings because, yeah, I mean, the space it's interesting. The building is interesting. It's not certainly like the most ideal facility for a school. So I think keeping our eyes open is also still a good idea for potential opportunities. But I also know that it's probably pretty hard to come by in terms of buildings that we could afford and that would be a good fit. So just, we want to be very conscientious of our space needs. It's unclear to me. I mean, we have a lot of concepts, so it's probably numbers are probably really hard to come up with at this point in terms of just the number that you would need to do, a whole bunch of different concepts. But it's not clear to me exactly how much money we would need to do the sixth grade model or any sort of model where we're taking I think what seems to be most prudent to me is, we have to figure out room for those CDS kids. So figuring out how to move kids from the elementary school over does make sense to me. When I talked to a lot of voters last year, a lot of people were interested to see more hands-on stuff go to younger grades, to see those LRTC type opportunities to younger grades. So I was even thinking you don't really see fifth and sixth put together, but I was wondering that would move potentially. Although actually, I don't know. If we're talking about mixing grades, I guess that would be one potential because I know we can't move all the sixth graders over. But just to have a couple different grades together. And I think those were my thoughts just around and obviously also just yeah, the run cost that we have for it is not sustainable to keep forever, which everyone has highlighted. And so trying to, I mean, it does seem like, I think Member pointed out about like what's going on in our city right now and the revaluation and everything. And like, I think that people are, just very obviously we want to use our money as always as efficiently as possible. So it seems like, I don't know if I'm curious if there's been any thought to what the end point is, at which point, like if we don't get the grant dollars by this date, then we really need to like have a different plan for the CDS kids in space.
I'm going to say a word and then I'll see what the superintendent thinks. I think the school committee might need to have an opinion on that and express that. And I'm not sure if the superintendent already has an opinion on that. But because I think that is going to play into budget concerns, budget cycles, just public perception, I think generally, I do think we should start to think about how long the district can hang on to the building without securing funding. I think that's a question for the committee, but I also think it's something I'm curious to hear if the superintendent has an opinion on that as well.
So, I mean, I alluded to it earlier in the slides that this isn't just a sit on it forever thing because it does cost money to keep it from just going away. I don't see how, and I don't see anybody else pointing a flashlight, but I don't see how we are sitting here 12 months from now without a substantial something and action steps. If we get into next budget season and it's status quo, we're making a different move. We're going to have to for space purposes and also to be wise with the financial resources. But I do think we'll know that answer in the next 8 to 10 months. I would not anticipate without having serious action steps happening and funding known. I would not anticipate me coming back to you next budget season with a request to float the building with heat for a year to make sure it doesn't freeze up. That said, I can't predict the future. And I do think that we're looking at the longer we wait, the more expensive things have gotten. I do believe at one point in time, but I don't want to quote anybody that this would be a $20 million project. A new building of that size would be double or 2.5 times that. We have acquired the building, so it's owned. We don't pay a mortgage on it. Anything else that we did, we would likely have to consider. So it's not ideal for lots of reasons. If we don't have something in the next 8 or 10 months that is a stimulus to the project financially, I think we got to look at another option. I'll also say that we constantly look for other options because the space issue I don't think is going to go away. But I do know, while people may not like the concept or the grade span or how much it might cost, I would feel negligent to not bring you something because we do have a space concern and it is likely to get worse. So to that end, I'm not married to the building. I didn't go up there and put a stake in the ground that this is going to be this place. It was available. It was within reach. It wasn't an added budget item. To Member Bowden's point, there were constraints on those dollars, and they could be used in that way to acquire some possibility, which has allowed us to apply for grants and other funding to see if we can get some momentum behind it. But it's going to have to play out, or it doesn't. It's not we're not going to do this next year and the year after the after. It's unless it's really actionable and really close.
Member Hawkins.
I just have a couple observations about the space there at 287, and this is coming from a driver's perspective. If you even entertain the idea of offloading students on Sabata Street to go into that building, somebody needs to be in serious trouble. I will tell you, though, that Oak Street to turn into the parking lot behind with on-street parking becomes very, very tight. Making that turn in a school bus without damaging the cars parked on the street is also, so that might require some work with the city about moving curbs, I don't know, but keep that in mind. And I know it's in there. I know it's on, but remember, great big 40, 50-foot long steel box. It can only fit in such space. So yeah, offload. If you ask a driver to offload kids on the side of a bad street. Oh my God. Anyway, yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Member Eames.
I go to, as the, what am I called? The legislative liaison. I go to a bunch of meetings with different people from all over the state. And they're offloading buildings like mad because they have shrinking populations. And I wish we had their problem, but we have the opposite problem. And I just wanted to, so I think sometimes Augusta thinks of that as the norm. We're not the norm, but we are definitely bursting at the seams, and this is a really important issue for us, especially with CDS coming in. But I just wanted to remind everybody that most school districts in Maine do not have this problem.
Yeah, that's very true. Oh yeah, Member Hawkins.
I had a thought while we were talking about the sixth, seventh, eighth model and the sixth grade model. I know change is difficult for students and can really interfere with learning, but I wonder if there isn't a way to be like, this is a CTE learning space. In this semester, this group of students will go there and like a rotational, because that could be almost an incentive for some kids. You know, if you keep along this path, you get to go to CTE center next. Just an idea that popped into my head. I don't know if that's even feasible or possible, but I don't know that that would help with anything either. So
Yeah, I like that concept. Yeah, that is interesting. I mean, I would just share maybe a few opinions of my own, and I think similar to others, previously we had talked about, a number of concepts, one of which included, moving to a 6, 7, 8 middle school model, which I think definitely has plenty of challenges, but I would prefer that over specifically taking out one grade. Just if nothing else, for the social and development dynamics, I think that could create. Um, just a couple general things. So one, Member Eames mentioned the challenge in most other districts is losing student population, and it would be great if we could just pick up one of their buildings and drop in Lewiston, but they're not very mobile. I would say though, just broadly, it's a very challenging situation to be in, but I'm happy that we are in this situation and not a situation where we're losing kids. This means more opportunity for the city overall, that we are having more students over time. And the superintendent did reference this earlier. I was looking just through some census data, and Lewiston does have an unusually large percentage of its population that's under 5 specifically. And that means both, more students in future years anyways, but even more for the CDS, because some portion of that population will need those services. And it's unusually large, both, for the state as a whole, but also, compared to Portland or other areas. And so, and that's before any of these new housing projects get built. So I think that's important because we could get caught in thinking about, we don't want to have to spend this money, but I think we will have to spend money some way. And it might not be this way. It's still more likely than not, seems to me like using this building will probably be the most cost-effective thing to do, but we'll see. I think it's certainly better than having to build a new building from scratch. I'm not sure if it's better than, and maybe this will be a question in a minute, modulars kind of up and down the grades, which I went to middle school or 7th grade, all in modular classrooms, and I wouldn't recommend it. But also, I guess I turned out okay. So, just thinking through if and when it does get to the point where we have to be making financial asks on Lewiston taxpayers, I think we have to be very clear what the alternatives are. And if they are better or not, what the trade-offs are. I don't see there being a version where we spend no additional dollars to address this. Modulars cost money. I mean, they cost less perhaps than a full-on, regular building, but it's not zero. And, that seems to be the type of budget conversation we keep having is like, well, we have to spend this money on this thing because we're just kind of forced into the situation. And I don't particularly enjoy that. But again, this is of all those types of things, this is one I'm maybe more, it's a problem I'm happier to have, that we do at least have some opportunity with these students. But yeah, it is difficult. I agree. I think before the next budget cycle, I would be uncomfortable just continuing this situation. I would hate to have to just dispose of the building at that point, but I think that's something we'd have to consider. Again, considering all the alternatives, and I definitely do view it differently in terms of whether we get grant funding or not, or whether we would be relying in part or in whole on city bond money, which I think I would have a hard time getting fully behind that, honestly. Let's imagine it is in the $20 million range. That is not, for better or for worse, out of scope of other building projects that the city has undertaken recently, but it is a lot of money to ask for in a sensitive time. That would be a difficult conversation to have. But I think it's very possible that we'll end up in that situation. I mean, you can never guarantee any grant money, certainly at that scale. I mean, grant money is unusual to come by. So that is just a few thoughts of my own. I think I like generally the concept of having a slightly different type of learning space. I think there might be a different model in terms of the grades that move in to that direction. And I do think, there will be the committee eventually will have to consider, not just the reconfiguration for this one building, but then all of the downstream effects and costs, reconfiguring the elementary schools to handle CDS. If we do a 2 middle school thing, there's going to be a lot of subsequent, decisions and potentially funding that stem from this. And I think it can be a little challenging now, just trying to think of like, okay, what's a nice concept at least to continue moving forward with for planning purposes. And so that's just to say, there'll be a lot to deal with in the future. I did see, I think another hand or two. Yeah, Member Glenn.
I'm sure you probably considered this, but you were talking about the inclusion with the CDS. Would a possibility of CDS pre-K and kindergarten being in that building, is that not a good idea?
That's when we get into the challenge of the little kids on the stairways. Because the smaller they are, the more restricted those codes are.
Other thoughts from the committee at this stage? Yes, Councilor Herman.
Just going off what you were talking about, is that something to consider would be a municipal bond of that size would require a referendum too. So we would have to have a good concept and sell it to voters as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you recall what the limit is to require that?
I'm thinking it's 10 million, but it might be even lower than that.
It shifts.
Okay.
It changes with, so it's a metric of valuation and current debt and all kinds of things. I think right now it's over 10. And just for an example, the police department, that project, I don't know what it costs all said and done, but that was one of the projects where they started with a concept, and then I think they had 2 separate LCIP funding bond cycles to fund that project, and then whatever it was to finish it off. I think it's very similar to the fire station out on Temple, as far as how they went about the project locally funding.
Other comments from the committee at this stage? Member Harper.
Thank you. Our superintendent said 8 to 10 months you were thinking as far as like because I think 10 months brings us to February, which is next budget season, basically, just before next budget season. So, I wonder if it would make sense to, just think about, I don't know, some time frame before that. I mean, 8 months, it would be, December, I think. Yeah. Um, to just think about, I don't know, like, um, so we've applied to a bunch of grants currently. I would assume that we would know back about those at some point, like by the end of the summer. No, yeah, they're all over the place. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't really have anything substantive to offer other than that it may make sense to like try to set some goals closer to February. I mean, like before that, about what we're gonna do.
Yeah, I think that is a good point. I mean, one thing that I've heard sometimes in conversation is a sense of like, well, what's going on with this? And so I think just having it clear that it is being worked on, first of all, but also from the committee's perspective, it's not something that we'll just kind of forget about indefinitely, but that will. I mean, I'm imagining we'll have to check in at least once more in this calendar year, because if the grants do come through, we'll want to check in then. If they don't, then, you know, I think we're going to have to talk about it, and it'll be the same conversation then as in another couple months after that. So I imagine we might check in on this a little bit later in the year once more funding is clear. Is there anything, Superintendent, that would be helpful for you to hear from the committee? Any other just points that you wanted to raise, or anything else it'd be helpful to provide input on at this stage?
I think just I'll keep you posted with what comes to fruition, or if it doesn't. So whether we get notice of these grants being received or not, we usually know one way or the other. Once we find out, I'll bring that back to you. And yeah, you said February, which for me, we start budgeting in December. If we don't have actionable things by then, I mean, it's a matter of time, I think. But yeah, I think I'll emphasize that this happens sooner or it doesn't happen, at least at that particular property in this particular way. And I will also note that it sat vacant since 2020, not being used. Does have needs, it's not move-in ready. So even if we do try to move it, it could sell quickly, but it may not.
Member Harper.
Thanks. So real estate is a very interesting market, and sort of how you navigate it. But I was curious, like if the schools have ever, or if this is a thing that's done, but put out to the wider community just some basic parameters of the kind of facility that could meet this like school's space needs, just as like, if someone wants to come forward with an idea for a building, so that it's not on you entirely to be doing all of that research. I don't know. I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but it seems like if I was you know, I don't know how else people are going to, if someone wanted to help, I guess, or offer up some asset that they have.
Say.
So anyway,
Kidding.
just an idea.
We did engage with real estate agents in this process. It was then, not now, but they have a pulse on the market and what's around, what's available. As far as someone donating a space, we haven't done that wide of an ask, but I'll start it right now. If someone has a space that they think we can teach 6th, 7th, and 8th graders in a hands-on model, please call us. We'd love to have that discussion.
Okay, should we close that agenda item? Okay. Agenda item number 9 is to receive an update on a futsal court proposal.
Give me 1 second to get that document up. But I can start talking about it while I'm looking for it. It is a proposal to, it's called a mini pitch or futsal. And of course, this is easier. Sorry, I wanted to get a different form. It's scanned to you sideways. I apologize for that. It's not what I would want you to have. So between US Soccer, whoops, and Hearts of Pine, we're looking at a fundraising being done by somebody else that will help us potentially put in a futsal court or a mini pitch court. And here is the image of that. And so we're bringing it to you at this point. This would be a fundraised, donated component. It's a partnership. It's not something I'm bringing back to you with local cost. But US Soccer, and again, Maine Hearts of Pine, the club team down in Portland, they're looking to collaborate. We've been good partners, I think, to them, allowing them to use the field when their facility was under construction. Certainly, soccer is a popular thing here in Lewiston. But these mini courts are essentially they're fenced and they're built well. It's a concrete or pavement surface that gets painted. And in the right-hand side, you can see kind of the rendering of one. They also have them where you put a basketball on one or both sides so that basketball can be played one way or the other. But the idea for this came from obviously organizations that want to help create this opportunity, but also behind Longley School, there's a kind of a mini basketball court that is pretty tired. And so when we started looking at, well, what else could we do here that kids would like and enjoy, that doesn't break rules or cost us tons of money, this was one of the ideas that came up. And Jason Fuller has been in contact with US Soccer and Hearts of Pine about this potential collaborative opportunity. But whenever we're collaborating with someone to try to raise this kind of money, I like to make sure you know it's a conversation, and that location is at least a conversation. We haven't gone out and done measurements, but we'd be looking for this collaborative partnership to see if the money can be raised to have this installed at no cost to Lewiston Public Schools and available for the community. So two things for you, just to update. We're looking to get your don't know you have to vote on it, but if you want to put it down and not have us pursue this, please give me some direction. But also, so fundraising and then also location potentially are two things I wanted to make sure you were aware of.
Member Eaves.
So futsal is usually inside. This is outside? Okay. And the upkeep would be on us after it's done, or is that part of the deal?
Yeah, I would assume, we're going to assume costs of upkeep. However, they're built pretty rugged and I don't anticipate a lot of upkeep. I've heard stories of like kids in other areas that will bring their own shovels to clear it off so that they can play in the winter, things like that. But I don't see it as something that we would plow or anything like that.
Member Bowden.
Thanks. So I guess the only thing, I mean, I think it's a great idea, but I'm just a little worried about, you know, we have our high school fields, we have them fenced in. We had a lot of community discussion, a lot going on with like our stuff getting wrecked and our stuff getting vandalized. And so now we, you know, keep a pretty close eye on things and keep things locked up. So we don't have people at night going in and vandalizing them. And how, if it's in that spot, are we going to do the same for this? That's my biggest concern is, you know, if the money is spent on this, how are we going to keep it from getting vandalized and destroyed? Because that tends to be a thing that happens in the city.
I mean, there's no guarantees. patrol does go behind Longley. We do have a pretty up-to-date camera system back there that at least monitors. But no, I think any structure in our community, there's some level of inherent risk. I'm sure that surface would get some individualized paint on it at some point.
Member Hawkins.
I like just looking at this, the rendering there of how many different ways this space could be used. Because soccer fields are great, football fields are great, but they don't always lend themselves to other uses. Throw a basketball court up there, and there's at least 3 different ways I can see using it, depending on the season. Yeah, we might have some issues with vandalism and whatnot. We get the kids invested on, hey, here's a space you could use. It's your space, take care of it. That can help. But it is very much we need to get the community involved too. Because I know when things did happen behind the high school, there were a lot of parents that were very unhappy with their small people because they were excited about having the space for their children to use. So I like the idea. I want to see where it goes.
Member Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Given that we just cut nearly 30 positions, I don't think we should be taking on anything that's going to require any extra maintenance costs. I just don't think that'd be a good idea for us. Also, the agenda also says nothing about a discussion on this either. I'm not prepared to really discuss this. Not happy.
Counselor Herman. Oh, Counselor Herman. Hold on. Counselor Herman, you raised your hand.
Yeah, no, I think it's if it's something that can come to us without much cost, and I would also say that we don't bother to plow it. We don't put lights on it other than what's there to really minimize our costs as a district. But I think it's another opportunity for youth to get out there and play sports and get involved in activities that are positive and productive. So I think it's good in that way.
Member Jensen.
Yeah, to clarify, it's not an administration, it's not anyone putting the proposal forward. It's more just, I guess, the way this agenda is set up here and just, I mean, the public, I mean, if they knew that we're going to be discussing this and giving some kind of input, then the public should have been, informed to give them a chance to be able to be here. The way I like to, like when I get the agendas on Thursdays, if there's something I'm not familiar with, which this is very much one of those, just like the last agenda item, I like to do my research, contact people, figure out, how to give the input I need to give the input so that I can be the best public servant possible. I take my oath very seriously, and I just wasn't given that opportunity. I literally thought we were just going to be here and hear a couple proposals and okay, and then we'll have a discussion in the future. Like the last agenda item, we're going to have that same discussion again. So I just don't feel like this was the most efficient way. I'm not necessarily mad at anybody. I don't really mean that. I guess one, it's a Monday. I'm grumpy. It's a little bit late, but I'm just kind of upset at the situation and that we could have probably structured this better. So it's not just at anyone particular, it's also myself. I just feel like we need to maybe just do a little bit better. I'm not speaking totally clearly on that, but it's the best I can do right now.
All right. Any other comments on this agenda item? Yeah, Member Harper.
I am excited that the Hearts of Pine want to fundraise for our school district and to get a court for kids. I felt important to just lift up that we are constantly hearing from parents who are interested for opportunities, particularly in the winter. I mean, it's cool that I could totally see kids absolutely shoveling it off so that they could play without an indoor arena, which I would be so amazing for our community to have. But in absence of that, just more opportunity I would also, hope that it could be free to use. Like you wouldn't have to, reserve it or, people could just use it as needed. And I loved Member Hawkins' point about sort of figuring out, I don't know if Longley School and Next Step and the folks there could be involved in just seeing as how it's there of sort of getting some youth stewardship of the courts. or if anyone it would make sense within the district to be thinking about that. And yeah, I also totally hear the concerns around vandalism and around, cost. And I definitely would want us to try to minimize any like long-term maintenance costs. I don't know, maybe it would be a good idea to just know what the estimates would be around long-term maintenance for something like that. But yeah, in general, I think that it's an incredible opportunity, and it would be, and I'm just grateful that Hearts of Pine folks are thinking of Lewiston schools and thinking of the opportunities that that's going to give our youth here. So yeah.
All right. Any other comments before we move on? All right. Agenda item number 10 is a report from school committee chair. The only thing I'll just keep harping on is early voting May 6th and 7th, I believe, assuming the city council will move forward with our budget. And then the election day for this is May 12th. And just trying to spread the word as much as we can. And actually, the only other thing would be the future meetings, which we discussed last time, but actually I think the superintendent was going to mention that, so I'm going to move it on to the report from the school superintendent.
So a few things, you may see or hear things in the community about a gift from the Leahy family. I believe it's the Leahy family. This is being run through some city efforts, but we're on the periphery of them for spaces like the PAL field behind the middle school, where you may see some significant upgrades to structures and systems stemming from this gift. So while it's not Lewiston Public Schools directly, there's some fingerprints there and some process that we're involved with. Also wanted to share, it was noted that we have one meeting scheduled in May, and I know we've had a lot of meetings, but we really should have a second one. And kind of just saying it out loud, last meeting, it sounded like May 18th could work for folks. So if there was no objection, I was going to schedule May 18th. And we're also working on future school committee meeting calendar, and that will be back before you. Could be as early as next week because we're meeting next week also.
Member Bowden.
Sorry, could May 18th be our workshop to go over our goals? We just turn it into that, or did you need like a regular meeting? Just curious.
I don't. And as we get closer to the end of the year and all of the budget things that are some unknowns, we're starting to get thinner on items, I think, without doing the goals. So I wouldn't be opposed to that suggestion. Or we could do regular business quickly and then transition to a workshop.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my hope would be if a week from today might be a little soon. And so if the 18th is the best time to add that in, that might be the easiest. Okay. Anything else for your report? Any questions for the superintendent's report? Okay. Agenda item number 12 is the report from the city council representative.
Thank you. I don't have a lot to report. We're still discussing the city budget. We have a workshop tomorrow evening and another one Thursday evening. And then the school budget is presented next Tuesday, which is a regular council meeting on the 5th. Yeah, so other than that, that's all I've got. I do have one ask for the superintendent, if we could get a sort of a clean copy of the school budget. Some counselors were asking about that, just to have an updated view of where the school budget's at as soon as possible. Thanks.
Okay, any questions about the report? Okay, agenda item number 13 is updates from school committee subcommittees. Yes, Member Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Earlier today, the curriculum subcommittee met. We just did some review, past work. I'll be serving as chair of that. We reviewed our purpose. We talked a little bit about the Wabanaki studies and financial literacy and the state requirements on that, in particular, some that might be changing. Talked about the graduation policy, talked about pathways, school reconfiguration, possibly middle school hands-on learning, and then also just had a short discussion about the units of study and seeing that there's some review going on for 3 to 5. Thanks.
Great. Member Eames?
Subcommittees are getting underway. Policy has met. We will be meeting about the cell phone policy that the legislature just passed. So if you have opinions about that, we're going to be meeting mid-May, early May. So get opinions to us, please. But we're going to have to accommodate the law. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I meant to bring it up actually in the chair's report, just that I think school districts in Maine have until August to implement a cell phone, August 1st. So we'll have to act on that relatively soon. Okay, great. Thank you for that update. Other subcommittees? None yet? Okay. Okay, number 14 is school committee community announcements. Any community announcements? Okay, number 15, future agenda items. Anything? Yes, Member Glant.
Not a future, well, I guess it will be future, but I am glad, because I had wanted to put a cell phone on our agenda, I think about a year ago. And I am happy to hear that the state is doing something. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other agenda items to add? Okay, so with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, moved by Member Bowden,
Second.
seconded by Member Harper. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed?